Hello, everyone. My name is Daniel Fisher. You can call me Dr. Fisher, Dr. Daniel, Professor Fisher, Daniel, Mr., same thing, or you just call me by my first name. I really don't care. One of the few professors that really don't care what you call me. I'm just kind of trying to encourage as much communication as possible, so therefore just call me whatever you feel comfortable with. I just want to take this time to review kind of the rationale for this course, my biography, my pedagogy, and then briefly, hopefully, walk through this syllabus. All right, so with that said, let's jump into this. Beginning with my high school background, I went to the prestigious Seabreeze High School, located in sunny Daytona Beach, Florida. You can see that on the left-hand side, and you can see Seabreeze High School situated within the greater Daytona Beach area on the right-hand side. You can also, and probably notice, that it's quite close to the beach, where, of course, no high school students, including definitely not myself, would skip courses or classes at the time to attend the beach. Funny enough, I actually recently ordered my high school transcripts, and we were not sending our best at that time. Kind of a low effort situation. But I digress, and we progressed though. We graduated, it's all good. So after graduating high school, instead of attending college, I decided instead to work again at a very prestigious, two prestigious institutions known as Panera Bread and Office Depot for about a year. And then after that, I volunteered to teach in Kenya at a school for orphans for about 3.5 months. And then coming back from Kenya, that's kind of when I began my undergraduate degree. But because my kind of background's a little scattered shot, you know, going from high school to working to then going overseas and then teaching, I'm just going to put my teaching experience right here. So some of my teaching experience is, as stated, around Kenya, Nairobi. Is really about 10 miles or so outside of Nairobi. And then kind of everywhere in Central Florida. I was a substitute teacher for a while. And then kind of at a university setting, I've taught at the University of Florida, the University of West Florida, obviously at Nova, and some state colleges, Gulf Coast State College around Panama City area. So jumping back into my undergraduate career, I began my college education, again at the prestigious Daytona State College, which actually was Daytona Beach Community College when I first began enrolled there. I believe I'm the first cohort of Daytona State College graduates, so a big honor indeed. There I majored in political science. But my first semester there, kind of similar to my high school career, I kind of bombed immediately. Not being aware that you are actually able to withdraw from courses. I was a first gen college student attending kind of a small community college on Pell Grants, so really unaware kind of the structures of academia and, you know, the possibilities. So I just take that, so I immediately took that F. So not a really great strong start for me. So kind of speaking to the fact that, you know, if I can bomb that first semester, kind of have this weird background, then, you know, anybody can do it. I'm not special in any way. That kind of just speaks on the possibilities of, you know, bouncing back a little bit. But anyway, after graduating with my AA from our Associates of Science, I believe, not arts, with a focus in political science, I transferred to the University of Central Florida, where I double majored, or not double majored, actually, I earned 2 different bachelor's degrees for some reason. One in political science and one in psychology with a minor in cognitive science. While there, I worked and published a research article, Design of Instructions for Evacuating Disabled Adults. Basically, I worked in a research lab that research kind of assistive technologies for people with disabilities, and we focused on designing kind of evacuation equipment in case of emergency for people with physical disabilities. And finally, after completing my bachelor's degrees, I enrolled at the University of Florida for my PhD after not getting in my first a cycle of applications because of a number of mistakes I made. But regardless, we made it again. And I worked at the kind of a G environment interaction lab, which really looks at the impact of environments, the impact of environmental factors, such as large-scale traumas. Specifically, I was looking at mothers in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the impact of war, poverty, and kind of just generalized collective stress on their developmental outcomes and the developmental outcomes of their offspring children. So you can kind of see here me kind of taking this interdisciplinary approach, this kind of history, political science, and psychology, and kind of biology, to analyzing or using those frameworks, I should say, to analyze developmental outcomes in mothers and children in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. I also taught there for a number of years. I primarily taught at multivariate statistics and numerous other statistics to PhD students, which I did so kind of in a flipped learning environment, which is kind of what I'm trying to slightly implement here. But kind of the idea here was that you watch lectures online, you take quizzes online, and kind of do your background information kind of like independently. And the lecturer or the professor, I should say, would upload kind of YouTube videos of the lecture. Not as creative as mine, though, please. I then, sorry, I got sidetracked by my neighbor's dog. I'm shooting this in one shoot. It's not that real. Anyway, so yeah, so you would work on it at home, watch these lectures, kind of do your background reading, and then you would come to class and then kind of work in these small groups and work on kind of these statistics problems together. So I've kind of incorporated some elements in this class, but we'll have our weekly YouTube lectures, which I will upload, and then we'll kind of have weekly discussions, which I'll review shortly, and then we'll have, well, not exactly weekly, but I don't know, 70% of the weeks, something along those lines. And then kind of little quizzes after each chapter. So kind of taking those principles that I've used in with PhD students. But anyway, I've also taught research methods, developmental psychology, adolescent psychology, cross-cultural psychology. And as I stated, kind of my background is applied background of kind of which is interdisciplinary in nature, combining politics, political science, political psychology, history, and kind of psychology all together. And as such, I'm a member of multiple professional organizations, including political psychology, peace psychology, and developmental psychology. It doesn't matter. I've also written numerous kind of news articles or kind of like breakdowns for Truth Out in these African newsletters. But kind of just giving you a little example of what I mean of the my interdisciplinary approach, and I should also add kind of the inherent interdisciplinary approach of psychology. Here are some little examples from just articles that I've grabbed. Let's see here. Linking climate change and health outcomes, examining the relationships between temperature and precipitation, birth weight in Africa. So kind of, again, you can see these large kind of environmental factors, not these interdisciplinary interactions between someone within their family, within their friends, which is usually how kind of Western psychology conceptualizes psychology, kind of really this personal, individual, internal process of behavior and development. But you can also see these larger structures beyond these individual interactions that impact development across the lifespan. And in this case, climate change. Another one here, intergenerational effects of war on the health of children. So kind of the idea here is that there's an intergenerational effect of war on the health of children. So a mother and or father are kind of stressed, they're exposed to war, which kind of leading to certain developmental outcomes, which then are also evident within their offspring. So again, speaking to these larger macro historical impacts of psychological outcomes. Growing up in poverty and civic engagement, so kind of a similar idea here, the impact of poverty on developmental outcomes, in this case executive function, which is basically like working memory and inhibition. Islamophobia, public health. So the impact of xenophobia, in this case specifically Islamophobia, on public health, on developmental outcomes. In this case, their physical health outcomes. Looking at the impact of specific legislation on developmental outcomes, in this case, children in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And I want to highlight a couple of the work that I've done. Prenatal exposure to political violence, the M23 Goma occupation. Doesn't really matter what that is, but basically the idea here is that mothers were exposed to a military occupation. I should say mothers in the Democratic Republic of the Congo were exposed to a military occupation. And those mothers were pregnant during that military occupation. And what I found through my research, and to my knowledge, the only person who has done this research on this invasion and kind of this framework of the impact of war or military occupation on pregnancy outcomes, what I found was that mothers who were exposed to the military occupation gave birth to children with kind of reduced height at birth, so kind of birth length, and by length I mean like height, so they're kind of smaller. So exposure to military occupation, that trauma, increasing the likelihood of giving birth to a child who's kind of undersized at birth, which is then associated with various long-term developmental outcomes. And then finally, my dissertation, early childhood executive function in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Basically what I did here, as I looked at the history of stress in Congolese mothers by asking them a series of questions. They indicated their levels of exposure to various poverty or economic, political, and more specifically war-related stress. I then accumulated that number in those mothers, and then I measured the executive function in their offspring, their children. And then I kind of tested to see if they were interrelated, and I did find out that I found, I should say, that the more stressors, the more cumulative stressors that mothers were exposed to as they grew up, the more at risk their child was of performing poorly on these executive function tasks. So again, speaking to these these historical factors, these large macro environmental factors, and kind of the possible intergenerational impact of exposure to this cumulative stress on offspring developmental outcomes. So really this intergenerational effect in the process of development. So after completing my PhD, which I completed in, when was that? Summer 2020, which was really perfect timing, just really graduating right into a pandemic, which really matches my previous undergrad graduation when I graduated into the Great Recession. So, good timing. But anyway, after graduating, I actually moved to Scotland, where I've lived on and off now for a better part of 2 years. Probably about half that time, so probably a year in total across these last 2 years living in Scotland. I moved there because, I should state that, whatever. I moved there because my partner actually is attending the University of Edinburgh, which is in Scotland, and please, it's ranked the 20th highest ranked university in the world. I will state for the record, though, that the University of Florida is the 5th ranked public university in the United States. So not quite there, but please, come on. She's not all that. But anyway, so I've lived in Scotland on and off for about 2 years. Where it's really beautiful. It's kind of the summer, kind of done hiking and all that kind of jazz. It's the winter, and also it's kind of the same mountain. All right, so with that said, let's jump into the syllabus really quickly. All right, so let's just jump into the syllabus. Kind of just basic information here. If you just reach out to me at any time if you ever need anything. We can always set up an appointment during Zoom. This is obviously a fast track course, which means that we're going to have a lot of information coming at you every week. It's a condensed course, and I have a tentative schedule laid out in the syllabus, which in general, if I'm going to change anything, it's kind of just to reduce the amount of work. But this is kind of our tentative schedule right now, and I'll make sure to let you know if there's any changes. But kind of scrolling back up just a little bit here, I want to talk about a little bit about my course approach. And specifically, my course approach is really de-emphasizing kind of memorization and kind of just that idea of, you cram and then you just dump out all that information. Why do I do that? Because one, any idiot can like Google something. Like I don't really care that you can Google a definition. Anybody's capable of doing so. What I'm trying to do in this course is focus on higher level learning. And that is the ability to create, to evaluate, to analyze, and apply. So not just memorization, but really taking that information and applying it to the real world to assess your degree of understanding of those constructs. Also, kind of giving that approach and emphasis on creating and evaluating, analyzing, I do a kind of emphasize in this course kind of a degree of student autonomy within a structure. So kind of I give you props, but within those props, you're free to focus on specific aspects of the material provided to you. And those materials include YouTube videos, scholarly journal articles, and our term paper. So what I'm really focused in is that you are as intrinsically motivated as possible, kind of enjoying the course, focusing on aspects of the material that are rewarding to you, are most enriching to you, and then engaging in this kind of peer-to-peer education process. And primarily I rely on discussion posts to do so. Let me say that our discussion post, again, will kind of be centered around YouTube videos, but really primarily it's going to be centered around kind of journal articles. I want you to take the opportunity in this, or use this course as an opportunity to prove as a writer and a reader, because one, if you plan on staying in academia, attending graduate school, that's primarily what you do, besides like research, is reading and writing. That's foundational to it and most of your work. And even beyond that, if this is where your educational career ends, reading and writing, always valuable for all jobs and kind of just human enrichment. So given that focused on intrinsic learning, kind of some degree of student autonomy, creating, having a deeper level of knowledge, and really an emphasis on practicing and learning together, not just taking the information I give you and kind of just regurgitating it back at me, but you kind of digesting that material and kind of including your own takes, but in a scientific, thoughtful way. And as stated, this will be primarily assessed through discussion posts. Now, these discussion posts are largely going to be ungraded. That is, in general, you're mercy graded at an 80% if you are kind of half-assing it, or don't complete a peer reply. And you should notice that, or you will notice that the percentage of your grade that is dedicated to discussion posts are quite high. So kind of just scrolling down a little, you can see about 20% of your grade is related to your discussion post, which is about equivalent to your quiz. It's a little less, but also it's really equivalent to your term paper. So this is a large chunk of your grade, and thus I'm not going to kind of allow for settling of statements that are just largely kind of surface level. We know all kind of the bullshit discussion thread way that people post, kind of just get through things because professors don't read anything and are really disinterested in kind of what you're saying. That's not going to be the approach of this class. I kind of want thoughtful, in-depth responses and kind of hopefully stimulated by this approach of this discussion board being worth 20% of your grade, and also this ungraded approach wherein you have less anxiety about grades and kind of more, and can focus then with less anxiety on grades on kind of thinking through this material, engaging in peer-to-peer learning, and kind of focusing on your own intrinsic learning goals. So really take this course, or approach this course with the idea and understanding that you kind of have a safety net, and you have an opportunity to work on your reading and your writing, and specifically your scientific writing, in critiquing scientific articles. Again, within the context of a relatively safe grading environment. And again, kind of in an effort to get rid of the fluff kind of approach to discussions, I'm only going to require one peer reply. So do not just type, I agree, great work, something like that. Instead, look to expand on your peers' replies, build on their arguments, or disagree with them. But regardless, bring depth, bring kind of thoughtfulness to your peer replies and kind of your your discussions in general. Okay, moving down a little bit, looking at quizzes. As stated, they're a quiz per chapter, and there will not be a midterm or final within this class. So I've never been a fan of kind of these mass accumulation like information dumps, where you're just grinding. You remember it for one day, then you forget for the rest of your life. I'm more focused on developing your skills again as a reader, a writer, a thinker, and helping you explore and kind of identify interests that hopefully are more, or research states at least, are more likely kind of stick with you long term. So kind of on that note, as stated, there will be a quiz for each chapter. We're not going to use the lockdown browser or like the webcam thing at all. I kind of view that as a violation of student privacy. But however, how it'll work is there'll be only one question displayed at a time, and you kind of have to go in order. That is like, so you get X amount of time to complete the quiz, and after you submit your answer to each question, then it's kind of locked, and you can't go back and then change it. And that's kind of the compromise that I've made with Nova to kind of get around a locked down browser, or whatever it's called, with a webcam. And then the lowest quiz is dropped. All right, so now let's move down to our semester-long project. So I'm not going to read all this, but basically the idea here is that 95% of research is conducted in quote-unquote weird countries. That is Western, college-educated, industrial, rich, and democratic. So the idea here is the research and the participants and the tasks that we're using in these very limited samples, primarily United States and kind of Western Europe, is the results from those studies applicable to the entire world? And is it applicable across kind of the history of kind of mankind? I don't know. Probably not. A lot of replication studies kind of seem to demonstrate that. So when you look at seminal studies, classic studies that are taught in psychology, they're rarely replicated in the U.S., let alone in other countries. So thus, I'm not going to emphasize kind of seminal studies in this course, but rather our readings and our focus and kind of the material that I'm going to sprinkle in the course in our lectures are going to be these cross-cultural research findings to kind of give us a better understanding of human development across cultures, to try to help kind of identify universal processes of development, but also cultural variation within development. So kind of the big culmination of that will be this research project wherein you have to locate 6 journal articles, 3 of which are from weird settings, again, Western educated, industrial rich. So basically United States, suburban, kind of like America / like Western Europe, university students, something along those lines, versus a non-weird population. And non-weird doesn't have to be international, it can be domestic. So Black Americans, immigrants, disabled individuals, people living in poverty in the United States, but also could be, wherever, it could be, just whatever, Thailand, Kenya, Cuba, etc. So basically, anyway, the point is, so you come up with a topic, you find 3 articles related to that topic within a weird setting, and then 3 articles, or I should say studies, of that topic in a non-weird setting, and then kind of write it up. You outline the studies, and then you're kind of do a little compare and contrast. Are the results the same? What's driving differences? And kind of just break it down. There's a rubric I'll have uploaded to Canvas, as well as example papers. And then the second and third component of that will be a presentation. So basically upload a 10-15 minute PowerPoint presentation, kind of walking through what you found. This is an opportunity to engage in peer-to-peer teaching. Also kind of practice discussing, doing a presentation. Presentations, talking, communicating, presenting science, or presenting any information that you've learned is valuable across industries and in education, obviously. And then finally, a peer review, where you basically watch two of your peers' presentations, and then you offer them feedback, what they did right, what they can improve on, and then kind of your overall thoughts. And that's kind of a completion grade. Again, kind of trying to pump in enough of kind of a grade buffer, a grade floor, so that you're able to intrinsically engage in the material without being super freaked out about grades. And I really stress like not this freaking, this kind of don't freak out about grades kind of thing, because one, teaching at PhD students, PhD programs really don't care about grades. And two, kind of grades, in my opinion, based on kind of research, kind of can distract from actual learning. So, we've all been in classes where we really don't care, or we kind of all understand that each course has kind of these arbitrary markers of grading, of performance, of things you have to, complete, which often kind of distract from actual learning. So kind of instead of actually learning, you focus on, okay, what do I have to do to pass this class? Okay, let me just do this thing and then move on with my life. Instead, I really want to make this class about learning, intrinsic development, and growth throughout the course. Thus, when you submit your discussion posts, I will actually read every single one of them, and I will go line by line reading them, and then offer you feedback every week. So what you did correctly, what you did, what you can do to improve, and then kind of like next step moving forward. So this iterative feedback approach that I provide, alongside kind of an ungraded approach to the discussion posts and kind of throughout this course, you can see with the peer review, kind of again to set that floor for grades, and then emphasize growth and learning and development. Okay, with that said, we'll start wrapping this up. So strengths and limitations of this course. The course is obviously online. There are no midterms or final. However, there are small quizzes. There are more writing and research within this course. And kind of, as I stated, kind of a focus really on developing as a thinker, as a reader, and as a writer. There's exposure to a lot of material outside of text. Due to my interdisciplinary background, I will be routinely bringing in material that is not found in the book. So make sure you watch the lectures, or at least look at the slides. There's an increased student input learning opportunities. So kind of, again, going back to the discussion posts, opportunities for you to focus on specific parts of the journal article that I provide, and the opportunity to kind of take that in kind of a direction that you prefer, as long as it meets the rigor, the appropriate rigor within a discussion post, and is scientifically sound. I'm not really interested in kind of your kind of personal narrative and kind of getting sidetracked. Personal narratives and personal stories are fine, but make sure that they're embedded within scholarly material. And I emphasize critical thinking, not memorization, and as opposed to this baking model of education, wherein a professor's job is kind of just to input you with a certain amount of knowledge, like you're kind of like a vase or something, and I'm filling you with water. Instead, I'm trying to encourage kind of creativity, critical thinking, and student-directed learning within a kind of scaffolding project, wherein I kind of give you the guardrails to make sure you stay on track. So as we wrap up, I just want to kind of look at what is psychology. And psychology is a scientific study of the mind, brain, and behavior. It spans many levels of analysis. It runs from biology to these large macro historical processes. We can't understand psychology by focusing on only one level analysis. Instead, we need to examine them all. So looking at the right-hand side, this is kind of a Bronfenbrenner model of development, where in these huge, all these different environmental factors interacting with each other to affect human development. So you have laws, values, economics, your neighborhood, your workplace, your individual relationships, all these things impacting development, not just these household, parents, or really micro systems that generally is focused on in the West, but also these larger macro and historical and state factors impacting development. And you can see that as something, so just for a quick example, something like education. Education policy obviously occurs in the neighborhood, but also education policy is dictated, by states within the United States, but also the country level through federal funding and various educational programs. And we all understand that education impacts development. So you can see just that one environmental factor, education, exists at multiple levels. And so thus you can see kind of how environmental factors bleed over to multiple levels, but also you can see how these larger historical macro trends of economics, educational policy, impacting human development. And as such, due to this inherently interdisciplinary framework of psychology, the APA, that is the American Psychological Association, has 54 divisions of interest, that is subdivisions of psychology. So again, speaking to the breadth of psychology, being much larger than kind of our typical general understanding of what psychology is and what impacts psychology and development more in general. And I forgot to hit the stupid little space bar here, but you can see kind of degrees of explanation on the right-hand side. And our last slide, popular psychology. About 3,500 self-help books are published each year. Only 5% are actually tested. So basically, a lot of self-help books are just kind of random conjecture based on very little little scientific evidence or little rigor. But again, it's just kind of highlighting how popular and important psychology is. There you have these thousands of books published every year about psychology, but it's not only that. It's really, psychology is so important because it's really how you understand behavior, how you understand development, kind of informs your worldview of what humans are capable of, how we understand each other, and thus, based on that understanding of how humans develop, how their quote unquote innate or developmental trajectories from environments. Based on that framework of analysis, that understanding of psychology, individuals will then advocate for specific political systems, specific environmental systems, specific public policy solutions. So really our understanding of human behavior and how humans develop is implicated and applicable to many kind of real world scenarios and institutions. And so kind of just a list of all the different kinds of psychology research: addiction, war, peace, economics, trauma, adolescent behavior, curriculum, driving. It's again kind of speaking to the interdisciplinary nature of psychology. So with that said, that's all for this week. Thank you so much for enrolling in this class. And if you have any questions at any time, please feel free to reach out to me. Have a great day. Bye.